The conference room went dead silent. 30 faces stared at me like I had just been diagnosed with something highly contagious. Julian Thorne stood at the head of the dark mahogany table, his arms crossed over his tailored suit. That smug smile plastered across his face like he had just won the lottery. "You are 59 years old, slow and utterly worthless," he said, his voice loud enough that the harsh words bounced off the glass walls. I felt my breath catch in my throat. 24 years. 24 years of early mornings, late nights, weekends sacrificed, birthdays missed. 24 years of building something from nothing, and this is how it ends, in front of all my colleagues. "Your title as Senior Systems Architect is hereby revoked, effective immediately," Julian continued, clicking his silver remote. The projector screen behind him lit up with my employee profile, showing my photo and details. He drew a bold red X through my name with his digital pen. "And the Aegis system you have been maintaining will be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up by a modern tech team that actually understands current cloud infrastructure." Aegis was my creation, my baby, and the absolute backbone of every single financial transaction our company processed. The system handled $65 million in daily operations without a single major database failure in more than 2 decades. Julian called it maintaining, as if I were just some janitor sweeping floors rather than the systems engineer who laid every brick of the digital foundation. I am Harvey Vance. Or at least I was until that chilly Thursday afternoon. For the past 24 years, I had been the senior systems architect at Bancroft Securities, a mid-sized wealth management firm that had grown from a scrappy local startup into a regional powerhouse. I was not just an architect, though. I was the architect, the person who had coded Aegis from scratch, who knew every line, every custom database function, and every delicate workaround that kept the entire complex operation running smoothly day and night. But none of that mattered anymore. Julian had joined the company 8 months ago as the new Chief Technology Officer. Young, ambitious, 34 years old, armed with a prestigious business school degree and a vocabulary filled with trendy buzzwords. He wanted to disrupt, to innovate, and to revolutionize our digital footprint. What he really wanted was to erase any trace of the old guard and stamp his own name on everything, and I was the last standing soldier of that old guard. "Questions?" Julian asked the room, though his sharp eyes stayed locked on me, challenging me to speak. I did not give him the satisfaction of looking away. My hands were shaking under the table, but my face remained stone. Nobody in the room spoke. A few people suddenly became fascinated with their laptop keyboards. Sarah from accounting stared intently at her coffee cup. Wes, a young developer whom I had mentored for the last 3 years, could not meet my eyes. Good. Meeting adjourned. Julian clicked off the projector. "Harvey, please clear out your desk by the end of the day. Security will escort you out of the building at 5:15 this afternoon." The walk back to my office felt like a funeral procession. People parted in the hallways as I walked by them. Some whispered behind their hands, while others pretended to be deeply involved in phone calls. I had been at this company longer than most of them had been in their careers, and suddenly I was treated like an invisible ghost. My office was small, tucked in the corner of the 3rd floor. It had no window, but I had never cared about views. I cared about the work. The walls were covered with systems flowcharts, database diagrams, and yellow sticky notes with code snippets I had been debugging. 24 years of my life in 200 square feet. I sat down at my desk and stared at the dual monitors. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Here is the thing about building something complex. You do not just create it and walk away. You nurture it. You understand its quirks, its weaknesses, and its hidden strengths. Aegis was not just lines of code to me. It was a living thing, and I knew every single heartbeat. I also knew something Julian did not. Bancroft Securities did not actually own Aegis. Not entirely. See, when I had built the core system 24 years ago, I had been an independent contractor, not a full employee. The original agreement explicitly stated that I would retain the intellectual property rights to the core architecture, while Bancroft would have an exclusive license to use it. When they hired me full-time 2 years later, that detail got buried in the transition paperwork, and nobody had bothered to review it. Why would they? I was loyal, I was dedicated, and I was always there. But I was done being loyal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Brenda, my wife of 33 years. "How did the presentation go?" she asked. I had told her I was presenting a new database security update to the executive team. I had not mentioned that Julian had scheduled a performance review at the same meeting. I had suspected something was wrong, but I had underestimated his cruelty. "I will call you later," I typed back, my hands steadying. Another buzz came. This time it was my daughter Chloe. "Dad, can you watch the kids on Saturday?" Normal life was continuing, like the ground beneath me had not just collapsed. I did not respond. Instead, I opened my personal email and found the message I had received 3 weeks ago from Clifford Henderson. Subject: Confidential Inquiry. The email from Clifford Henderson, Senior Vice President of Technology Acquisition at Valiant Analytics, was brief and professional. "Mr. Vance, we understand you are the architect behind the Aegis financial processing system. Valiant Analytics would be very interested in discussing a potential consulting opportunity. We are developing our own platform and believe your expertise would be invaluable. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Discretion assured. Best regards, Clifford Henderson." Valiant Analytics was Bancroft's biggest competitor, the company that had been trying to poach our high-net-worth clients for the past 5 years, and the thorn in Julian's side at every quarterly review. I had deleted the email when I first received it. Loyalty, remember? But I had also remembered the sender and the email address. My hands steadied as I began typing. "Mr. Henderson, I am now in a position to discuss opportunities. Are you available for a phone call this afternoon? I have something you might find very interesting. Best, Harvey Vance." I hit send at 1:30 in the afternoon. The response came back at 1:35. "I can be at the Maplewood Cafe on Pine Street in 20 minutes, corner booth." I grabbed my leather briefcase, walked past the cardboard boxes I was supposed to be packing, and headed for the elevator. The Maplewood Cafe was one of those downtown spots that tried too hard to be modern, with exposed brick walls and hanging light bulbs. But the coffee was strong and it was far enough from the office that I would not run into anyone from Bancroft. I spotted Clifford Henderson immediately. He was in his mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit, the kind of professional who probably had his shoes shined weekly. He stood up when I approached the booth. "Mr. Vance, thank you for meeting on such short notice." "Call me Harvey," said, sliding into the booth across from him. "And I should thank you. Your timing is remarkable." He smiled, but his eyes were calculating. "I will be direct, Harvey. We have been trying to compete with Bancroft's processing speed and transaction accuracy for 3 years. We cannot. Our system crashes twice a month, and we have lost several major clients because of reliability issues. We know Aegis is the difference, and we know you built it." "You have done your homework," I replied. "We are prepared to offer you a substantial consulting contract," Cliff said. 8 months, your own team, and complete creative control. We want you to build us something better than Aegis." I took a slow sip of the coffee. It was bitter. "Perfect. I can do better than that," I said, leaning in. "I can sell you the Aegis system itself." Clifford's expression did not change, but I saw his fingers tighten around his ceramic cup. "Bancroft would never sell their core infrastructure," he noted. "They do not own it," I said. "I do." Now I had his full attention. I pulled out my phone and opened the scanned contract from 23 years ago, the one I had retrieved from my home files last night after I started. Suspecting Julian was planning something underhanded, I slid the screen across the wooden table. Cliff read the text in silence. The cafe noise faded into a background buzz as I watched the executive's face. He realized what he was inspecting. "This is legitimate," Cliff said, looking up. "Completely. I have already had my attorney confirm it." I lied. I had left a voicemail for my lawyer, but Cliff did not need to know that. The intellectual property for Aegis's core architecture belongs to me. Bancroft has an exclusive license, but that license can be terminated immediately for any material breach of our employment agreement. And humiliating you in front of 30 people and terminating your position would constitute a material breach, Cliff mused. "My attorney certainly thinks so," I replied. "You know, there is this moment in every negotiation where you can see the other person's mind working, calculating risk versus reward, running various scenarios. Cliff was doing that now, and I let him take his time. I had learned patience in 24 years of debugging code at 3 in the morning. Finally, he leaned back. What price are you demanding? $3,600,000 for the full transfer of intellectual property rights, I said. I will provide complete documentation, architecture blueprints, and 75 days of implementation support. That is a significant sum, Cliff said. Bancroft processes $65 million daily through Aegis. If the system goes dark, they lose that volume instantly, not counting the regulatory penalties and client lawsuits. $3,600,000 is a bargain, and you know it. Cliff pulled out his phone. I need to make a quick call. Excuse me. He stepped outside onto the sidewalk. Through the window, I watched him pace back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing. This was really happening. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. Clear purpose does that to you. Clifford Henderson came back 5 minutes later, a sharp smile on his face. We have a deal in principle, he said, sliding back into the booth. Our legal team needs to verify the ownership documentation, and we will need a non-compete clause that prevents you from selling to anyone else. Agreed, I replied. How quickly can you deliver the codebase? I checked my watch. It was 2:15 in the afternoon. I need to extract the core code before Bancroft locks me out of the secure network. Give me 3 hours. I will have everything on an encrypted drive by 5 o'clock. Harvey, Cliff said, and for the first time, his voice had genuine warmth in it. I am sorry about what happened to you today. I have heard Julian Thorne is incredibly difficult to handle. Difficult is one word for it. I stood up, shaking his hand. I will be in touch by 5. The drive back to Bancroft Securities took 15 minutes, but it felt like 15 seconds. My mind was racing through the technical steps. Aegis's source code was stored on the company's secure server, but I had administrative access to everything. The real challenge was not copying the files. It was knowing which files actually mattered. The system had evolved over 24 years, accumulating patches, updates, and quick workarounds. But I knew exactly which pieces were mine, which constituted the core architecture that made everything else possible. I parked in my usual spot, spot number 47, and rode the elevator back up to the 3rd floor. The hallway was quiet, the air thick with the hum of the air conditioning. My office was exactly as I had left it. The security escort was not scheduled until 5:15, which gave me almost 3 hours. I locked the door, sat down at my computer, and got to work. The extraction was methodical. I did not rush. 24 years of professional discipline had taught me that haste creates mistakes, and I could not afford a single mistake today. I copied the core Aegis architecture, the original algorithms, the proprietary data structures, and the interface protocols. Everything that made the system unique, everything that was legally mine, the files compressed into a single encrypted folder. 72 gigabytes of pure intellectual property. I copied the folder onto 3 separate encrypted drives. Redundancy is key. Always have backups. During the download process, I looked around the room, taking in the small details of my professional life. I packed my personal belongings. The family photos on my desk went first. One was of my wife Brenda laughing on a beach during our 10th anniversary trip. The other was a framed picture of Chloe and Paige when they were just little girls playing in the backyard pool. I placed them gently into my leather briefcase. At 5:15, I heard a firm knock on my door. Mr. Vance, security, we are here to escort you out. Just a moment, I called out. I ejected the drives, slipped them into the inner pocket of my coat, and cleared my browser history. The monitor showed nothing but the standard Bancroft desktop wallpaper, that bland corporate blue. I opened the door. 2 security guards stood there, looking uncomfortable. One of them, Gary, had been here almost as long as I had. We had shared coffee plenty of mornings in the break room. Hey, Harvey, Gary said quietly. Sorry about this. Just doing your job, Gary. They walked me down the long hallway, past Wes's office, past the conference room, where my career had been executed just hours earlier. A few people watched from their desks, but most pretended not to notice. The lobby felt different when you knew you would never walk through it again. 24 years of muscle memory, knowing exactly how many steps from the elevator to the door, exactly which floor tiles were slightly uneven, all of it ending. Gary held the heavy glass door open for me. Take care of yourself, Harvey. You too, Gary, I said. My car was waiting in spot number 47. I wondered how long before they reassigned it. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. I had text messages from Brenda, Chloe, and my younger daughter, Paige, asking if I wanted to grab dinner. Instead of answering them, I called Clifford Henderson. "It is done," I said when he picked up. "I have everything. Our legal team has reviewed the contract and confirmed your ownership claim is solid," Cliff replied. "When can we meet?" "Tonight at your offices, if possible." "I would rather not do this in a public cafe. Let us meet at 8 o'clock. I will text you the address. Security will be expecting you." I drove home in a daze. Our house was a modest two-story home in a quiet suburb. The mortgage had been paid off for 5 years now, and the garden Brenda loved was in full bloom. Everything looked exactly the same as it had this morning, except for me. Brenda's car was in the driveway. I checked my watch. It was nearly 6 in the evening. I sat in the car for a minute, taking a deep breath before opening the front door. I found Brenda in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She smiled as I walked in, but her smile faded when she saw my expression. "What happened, Harvey?" I set my briefcase down on the kitchen island. "I was let go today. Julian called an emergency meeting and told me I was slow and worthless in front of 30 people, then had security escort me out." Brenda set her cooking spoon down. "What? That is impossible." I pulled her into a tight hug. I had not realized I was shaking until I felt her arms around me, solid and steady. "That arrogant man," she whispered. 24 years you gave them." 24 years, I agreed. "But there is more. I sold the core Aegis system to Valiant Analytics for $3,600,000. I am meeting them at 8 o'clock tonight to finalize the paperwork." Brenda blinked in absolute shock. I explained everything to her: the old contract, the intellectual property rights, and Cliff's offer. Brenda listened, her face shifting from shock to pure pride. "So you are about to turn his world upside down," she said. "By Monday morning, yes." "Good," she said, kissing my cheek. "I am coming with you." We left the house at 7:15 that evening. Valiant Analytics operated out of a massive downtown skyscraper, all glass and steel. The lobby was empty except for a security guard who checked our identification and directed us to the 18th floor. Cliff was waiting when the elevator doors slid open. He led us into a large conference room where 3 executives were already waiting. Cliff made the introductions. Audrey Miller, the chief executive officer, a sharp woman in her mid-60s. Preston Finch, their chief legal counsel, young and intense. Victoria Mercer, their chief financial officer, who gave us a warm welcome. Audrey stood up and shook my hand. "Mr. Vance, Cliff has briefed us on your situation. First, what happened to you today was completely unconscionable. Second, we are very pleased you reached out." "Let us get down to business," Preston said, sliding a thick document across the table. "We have drafted a purchase agreement based on the terms you discussed. $3,600,000 for the full transfer of intellectual property rights, including 75 days of implementation support. We have included a non-compete clause and a strict confidentiality agreement." I read through it carefully, and Brenda read over my shoulder. The language was dense, but fair. "I will need my attorney to review this," I said. "Of course." "How quickly can that happen?" Preston asked. "My attorney Alistair Croft is expecting my call. If I send this now, he can review it tonight." "Excellent." In the meantime, Victoria opened a folder. "We would like to understand the transition. When will Bancroft lose access to Aegis?" "That depends on when I file the license termination notice. The contract requires 75 days, but given the material breach of my employment agreement, I can terminate it immediately." Audrey leaned forward. "What happens to their operations if the system goes dark?" "Complete shutdown," I said. "Aegis handles all their transaction processing, portfolio management, and data analytics. Without it, they cannot execute trades or access client information. They would be in violation of dozens of financial regulations within 24 hours. And they have no backup system. Julian has been pushing to build one, which is why he wanted me gone, but they have not even started. They have absolutely nothing." Victoria and Audrey exchanged a look. "Here is what I am thinking," Audrey said. "We do not just want Aegis, we want Bancroft's clients. If their system crashes on Monday morning and we have a superior alternative ready, we can offer their clients a lifeline." "A strategic acquisition," Brenda noted. "Exactly," Audrey smiled. "We would be helping stranded clients." I considered the scale of this. This was not just personal revenge. This was a massive market shift. How many clients are we discussing? I asked. Victoria pulled up a spreadsheet. Bancroft has 310 active clients, representing roughly $1,200,000,000 in assets under management. If we can capture even 30% of that, it is a massive win. You will need more than just the system, I warned. You will need proof that your platform is stable. Can you provide that? Cliff asked. Yes, but not in 75 days. If you want to launch a platform that can genuinely replace Aegis, you will need 8 months of development and migration work and a team that can work with my architecture. We have the team, Cliff said. 31 developers, 8 systems architects, and full infrastructure support. What we lack is the foundation. Audrey looked at Preston. Can we modify the agreement to include extended consultation of 8 months? We would need to adjust compensation, Preston noted. $4,800,000, I said, for 8 months of full-time consultation, architecture oversight, and team training, plus a performance bonus of $750,000 if we successfully migrate 30% of Bancroft's client base. Brenda's hand squeezed mine under the table. Audrey did not hesitate. Deal, she said. We shook hands, finalizing the terms. Preston Finch made the adjustments on his laptop. I will have the revised agreement ready by morning. One more thing, I said. I want my involvement kept completely confidential. If Julian finds out I am working with you before the system goes down, he will find a way to claim theft. We will structure this through a private consulting shell company. Preston agreed. Your name will not appear on any public filings. We spent another hour working through the technical details before Brenda and I left the offices at 10:30 that night. The downtown streets were quiet. You okay, Harvey? Brenda asked. I just sold 24 years of my work for potentially more than $5 million, I said. You made sure your work would continue to matter, she replied. I smiled, feeling a massive weight lift from my shoulders. Over the weekend, Alistair Croft reviewed and approved the contract. I signed it digitally on Sunday evening. The funds would hit my account in 5 business days. On Monday morning at 9 o'clock, sitting at my home desk, I sent the official email to Julian Thorne and the Bancroft Legal Department. The subject line read, Termination of Aegis License Agreement. I attached the original contract from April 2003. I wrote that my termination constituted a material breach of the employment agreement, nullifying the 75-day notice requirement and ending their license immediately. Then, at 9:04, I activated the fail-safe clean shutdown command that I had personally coded into the system 18 years ago during a security audit. Aegis began its graceful shutdown. It would take 45 minutes to complete, ensuring all active transactions finished safely. But once it powered down, it could not restart without an authorization key that only I possessed. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the system went dark. My phone began ringing constantly. Julian called 4 times, and Bancroft's legal department sent dozens of urgent emails. I ignored them all. Instead, I called Clifford Henderson. It is done, I told him. The system is offline. We are already seeing the impact, Cliff said. Their client portal is down, and our hotline is already receiving calls. By Monday afternoon, the financial news was reporting a massive outage at Bancroft Securities. By Tuesday, Bancroft filed for an emergency injunction, demanding I restore the system and claiming $75 million in damages. During the court hearing the following week, Bancroft's legal counsel, Maxwell Stone, tried to present a document claiming I had signed away my intellectual property rights 3 years ago. However, Alistair Croft was prepared. We presented evidence showing that my signature on that document had been forged. In fact, Julian Thorne had ordered the IT administrator to hack into the archive and paste my signature onto the document to cover his own tracks. This was a direct violation of California Penal Code Section 470 regarding the forgery of legal contracts. Alistair presented a comprehensive report from a forensic document examiner that proved the digital signature was copy-pasted from an old performance review, and the file metadata showed the document was created just 3 days after my termination. When the judge realized Bancroft had submitted a forged document to the court, she was furious. She denied Bancroft's injunction immediately, ruling that I retained all intellectual property rights and that the license termination was entirely valid. She also referred the forgery matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation, which meant Julian Thorne was now facing potential prison time. With their core system permanently offline and their legal defense shattered by the forgery scandal, Bancroft Securities collapsed. Within 8 weeks, they announced they were dissolving the company. Valiant Analytics absorbed 82% of Bancroft's clients and hired 62 of their former employees, including Wes. Our new platform, which we named Ironclad, launched successfully 10 weeks later. It handled its first $1 billion in transactions without a single error, which was a massive technical milestone for the entire industry. Valiant hosted a grand celebration to mark the occasion. At the launch party, Audrey Miller asked me to speak. I stood before the crowd looking at my wife, Brenda, who had been my rock through this entire turbulent process, and my new colleagues who had welcomed me with open arms. I told them that experience and expertise do not become worthless just because someone younger thinks they can do better. The applause was deafening, filling the large ballroom. Later, as Brenda and I walked along the quiet waterfront, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water, I felt a deep sense of peace that I had not felt in years. The lawsuit was settled out of court, with Bancroft's remaining representatives dropping all claims in exchange for my agreement not to pursue wrongful termination and emotional distress damages. I was now the chief architecture officer at Valiant Analytics, earning a salary that made my old paycheck look like pocket change. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply building something that lasts and being surrounded by people who respect your worth. If you have stuck with this story, thank you for being here. The Payback Office channel exists because we all need reminders that we do not have to accept being undervalued. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our goal of 12,000 subscribers. Because every person who joins this community is someone who believes respect is not optional.